everybody, and welcome to the world's favorite youth baseball podcast, Clearing the Bases, featuring Coach Jimmy Filangeri. I'm David Friedman, and I want to thank you for coming along this ride with us. How are we doing today, Coach?
Doing good, Dave. How about you?
Everything's good over here. I'm enjoying, somewhat enjoying the weather, if not for the smoke. We're always known, us compared to Canada, we're supposed to be the troublemakers, but it's kind of nice that the shoe's on the other foot for once.
Yeah, it's really amazing me, how bad these fires have to be for this smoke to be influencing such a big part of our country.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. I think we've been relatively lucky in our area because, I don't know if this affected you when you were at work because you were quite a bit south of here, but New York City, it was like the worst air quality in the world the other day.
Yeah.
And it wasn't horrible up here, but it's just a kind of a fluky thing, I think.
Yeah, and from what I heard, I think that today is probably the last day. They said it's blowing out over the ocean, so.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's good. Get tired of everything smelling like a giant bonfire. It's nice for a few minutes, and then it gets kind of old.
So I hear that your season is underway.
Yes, for me personally, playing, returning to the player side of the field for the first time in 22 years. It's been a challenge. So far, I'm enjoying it. Certain things that I'm doing quite well, certain things not so well. The differences in age and experience, wisdom, all that stuff being wildly different from the last time I played. But overall, definitely a positive experience. And I encourage any of the parents out there to listen in, haven't played in quite a while. You're not getting any younger. This was kind of like you finally facing it to me, if not now, when type of thing. And here I am, 6 games in on a season. So it's going pretty well.
Well, I give you a lot of credit because I think that it's something that I would say I would like to do. Just, I don't, I'm afraid to get out there and say, oh my God, this is what it has become. That's what I'm afraid of.
Hey, it's an over 45 league that I'm in. And if last I checked, you qualify. So, and I understand your weekends are fairly free. So, might need to keep that in mind.
Well, I mean, I'm assuming there's a DH in your league, yes?
We you can use DH, we can use multiple EHs.
Oh, so that's something I could do because, I was actually, during the spring with my high school team, I actually got in a cage and I was surprised. I was really surprised that I was able to barrel a few up. I was
nice.
I was happy. Nice. So I don't know. Maybe I'll think about it for next year.
We'll talk about that off air. Definitely. Definitely. But it's been fun. It's a good group of guys. And I am finding some interesting physical limitations, we'll say, things I never experienced while I was playing in terms of the wear and tear on my legs. My joints are still good. Hips, knees, ankles, all that is fine. It's everything in between that I'm having some issues with. Hamstrings feel like they could pop at any second. Calf cramps, just some funky stuff. But it's good running around in the outfield and getting to practice what I preach on a bunch of stuff.
There you go.
Has been good too. Trying to remember all these things that I have been drilling into the kids' heads over the years.
Yeah, I would imagine that's a little bit of an awakening. I would be curious to see how I reacted to it. It's been, since I've been on the field, it's probably been 30 years, maybe not quite 30, but about 30 years since I've been on the field. And yeah, I would like to see how my brain works.
Well, I'll tell you, it's I'll give you an example fielding wise. So I played primarily outfield, which is what that was my strength as a player back in the day. Fly balls, not really having any problems. I'm still picking the ball up off the bat pretty well. My legs, when I'm not limping, work well enough, so I'm able to get the angles down still, and pretty happy with that. What I'm finding a challenge is with hard ground balls, they're getting to me much faster than what my brain is processing. So in other words, I'm in front of the ball. It's not the angle that I'm missing, but I'm not getting down as fast as I should because I'm still thinking I've got time to really like square up and get in front of the ball. I've let a couple of balls past me that should have never happened because it's just all of a sudden up until this week, of course, we hadn't had a lot of rain over the last couple of weeks of the ground being hard and those balls really flying through. But it hit me kind of today we had a practice today and hit me a little bit that's what's going on, is that the ball is at me and I just need to start setting up a little bit quicker. So that's something. And that's while it looks physical, that's really a mental thing.
Yeah. I would probably think that would be the first thing that, your reaction time is gonna be slower than it was, of course. That should be the thing that would go. But let's put it this way: if that is the only thing that's going wrong, well, that's kind of expected.
Yeah, a little bit. It's weird in this league. People do definitely have problems judging the ball. It's fun. It's the same thing we go through with our kids. You see first step in all the time.
Right.
And that's not something I really ever had a problem with and still don't. But it's the other things. It's the smaller things and we're not getting a drill. We only had a practice day because it's a holiday weekend. We're coming up on July 4th, so all the games no games were scheduled for this weekend for us. So we had a practice, but I haven't had a practice now, and it's been 3 or 4 weeks since I had a practice, and that's obviously, like anything else in life, that's not a recipe for success.
Yeah, exactly. But then again, let's face it, right? We're doing this for fun. This is not a full-blown competition. You want to win. We all want to compete, but
yes, that's the idea. And yet, once you're in it, you're in it.
You're in it.
It's like anything else. Like, as a JV coach, we're not here to win every game. We want to be, and then you're in the middle of it, and it's like, oh God, should we pull this pitcher? Do we put this kid in? All those kinds of things. And it's the same thing here. It's a rec league. We're not going anywhere. Nobody's getting scouted by the MLB or anything. But you get those competitive juices flowing, definitely.
Absolutely.
So back to business here. We have what I think is going to be a great show for everybody, a little bit of a different direction than what we typically do. We had the pleasure of speaking with a few of our regular listeners, and we were looking to get some feedback of what the state of travel ball is. If you go back to our archives, and within the first couple of shows, we did what's wrong with town ball, little league, Cal Ripken, that kind of stuff. And then we did what's wrong with travel baseball, and we did a deep dive. We did a couple of deep dives into that. And now here we are 2 years later. We're revisiting the topic, but getting some input from the other side of the fence, so to speak, the parents of the players that are in it. And a little different format than what we're used to doing. Hope everybody gives us a chance, listen all the way through. It's a different take on the things that we talk about fairly often on this show. And I think it's going to be interesting for everybody.
Yeah, me too. One of our listeners from California, Rick Akers, reached out, and he actually made the suggestion. He said, hey, I think an interesting show would be to bring on a few parents that are involved with travel. So we put it out there. We got 3 gentlemen that agreed to come on, and let's see where it goes.
Yeah, so give it a shot, listen through, let us know what you guys think. If you think you have something to add, go ahead and reach out to us. We are, as always, at clearingthebases@gmail.com. That's the email address. At the CTB Show on Twitter. Go ahead and reach out to us and let us know if this is something that you found it interesting and helpful. Then let us know. If it's something that you'd like to participate again some point in the future, it's the type of thing I could see us doing, maybe once a year, twice a year, something like that, just to kind of make sure we're staying up on the latest and greatest. Go ahead and reach out to us and let us know. In the meantime, give us a review, give us 5 stars, help spread the word. We've been getting some great numbers in terms of our listenership and our downloads, and we want to keep that going for you. We want to keep bringing you great shows. And again, this one's a little bit different. Let us know what you think. All right. Well, we're online with a couple of our parents of travel ball players. So I want to give them each a moment to introduce themselves. James, why don't you start us off?
Sure. My name's James Mussel. I live in the St. Louis area. My son, we have one son. He is a high school senior and has committed to a D3 school in Arkansas. So we are at the tail end of all of our travel ball adventures and have learned a lot along the way, and just hope we can impart a little of a few of the things that we've learned and hopefully help some people out.
Great.
All right, great. Thanks. And Jake?
Jake McNamara, and I'm in the North Central Virginia area, Culpeper, Virginia, about an hour and a half outside of D.C. My sons are 10 and 7. We have had had about 4 total years of travel and 3 years of Little League under our belts, obviously playing simultaneously. So I'm on the front end of that, and I'm really hoping to learn as much as I can from James.
Well, I like the idea that we have somebody that's just jumping into it and somebody that's been through it, so we should be able to cover a lot of ground. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, it's nice to have a couple different ends of the spectrum here. And then, of course, Jimmy and myself, having had kids that have gone through it and been out of it for a number of years at this point. So nice to get that kind of perspective, hearing where we're at now and what looks like's on the horizon. We are hoping to have a couple more people jump in. We'll see if they come in as we go along here. We'll kind of play that one by ear and just be flexible with that. In the meantime, the first question, I assume in your area, like most areas nowadays, you have a number of options for teams to join.
Sure. There are 3 or 4 pretty elite groups. He ended up playing for, I think, arguably the biggest organization here. The reason we went with them is they have fantastic training facilities, one very close to our home, which was great. Really deep coaching staff, and just the organization itself. We had bounced from another one that, when I say organization, I'm talking like the coordination of travel, the communication. It was very disorganized. This group was absolutely buttoned up to a T, and there's a reason they're in many, many states around the country, but their headquarters just happens to be right down the road from us.
Wow, that's great.
So how long did he wind up playing with this last team that he was with?
The last 3 summers.
Okay, so that's a good amount of time.
Yep, really got a good feel for him.
So, Jake, you said that your kid's just getting started in it, and now how old are your players?
10 and 7.
10 and 7, and do both of them play it with travel organizations?
Travel now, yes. I had to make the decision on the youngest whether he was going to jump into travel ball this winter, and then into the spring, where we were going to have one more season of machine pitch with the local organization before we made that leap. But the talent level was there. I knew it was going to happen. It was just a matter of when. And of course, with our family dynamic and time and work and everything else, we had to balance out how are we going to do this? If we're traveling with 2 kids, how's it going to work? I coach on my oldest team. I'm an assistant coach, so that just adds to the difficulty, the logistics of it. And my wife is awesome, so she's fully committed to following my youngest around and toting our 3-year-old little girl around with her too. So she's disappointed that she's going to be missing some 10-year-old games, but that's also the beautiful thing about Game Changer and technology. It allows you to be in multiple places at once and just do your best as a parent, right? To fulfill those, whether it's an actual responsibility or whether we put it on ourselves just because we're feeling guilty because we're not there for our kids.
Are they both in the same organization?
Yes.
Okay.
So did you choose that organization for the 7-year-old was one of the driving forces because you guys were already going to be there, or was that kind of just happenstance?
That was probably the driving force, but it was also happenstance. I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum here from James, where I'm in a rural area, so I don't have a whole lot of choices when it comes to elite travel ball programs. There are some travel ball programs, but I just wouldn't call them elite. And you're up against, whether it's tryouts or you better show up and make sure that your tryout went well. And it's hard to make the teams, yes, because of the rural aspect of it. So yes, we're already in the organization. We know people there. So foot in the door. The thought process was I was already going to be at practices, so I could drop my younger son off at a different field. We got to drive 45 minutes to an hour away each night, and I wouldn't be coaching that team just
right
because I couldn't.
Right.
So that would be less responsibility on my shoulders. It's not turned out exactly that way, but that was the thought process, and trying to run a business on the side here too. So you can only stretch so far.
So, James, your son, how old was he when he started playing travel ball? I'm assuming he went from Little League to travel ball, correct?
Well, so we really don't have Little League per se here. We've got a lot of individual athletic associations that do baseball, but Little League of America is not, when I say Little League,
right.
Like there's no Williamsport in that. So we got here,
just to interrupt you real quick. So when we say Little League, we're talking Cal Ripken, Pony League, like any of the town ball leagues.
So let me just back up. When we were in Austin, yes, we could go and sign up and go to a tryout, and coaches would see them and coaches would pick the kids. When we moved to St. Louis, there wasn't an organization like that. Every single team was selected by the coaches, and you had to go on websites and look for teams looking for players. It was kind of a shock. Luckily, we when we got here, it was around the Thanksgiving time, so he made a lot of friends at school and was able to get on a very, very rec team for his first spring here. When we moved here, we heard select ball, and select ball in Texas meant a little different than select ball here in St. Louis.
I think it means something different in all locations in the country.
Right. So we got here, realized, okay, just need to get him on it. But the biggest shock was we had to go find him a team. We couldn't go to an organization and they would say tryouts on this Saturday, and the coach will pick him for the team. So I can't even remember the original question now. Sorry.
What age did he start playing travel ball?
Okay, so that was that would have been 8 years ago. So that would have been he would have just turned 11. And that first team was not necessarily a travel ball team. They did play in some tournaments that had travel teams come here for them. But his first real travel season was the following year when he was playing 12U.
All right. So it's interesting because I don't know if this is a sign of the times, because again, Jimmy and I, with our kids being older, not having been through that, but I know for us, there still is definitely multiple options for local leagues. Like one town has Little League, the next town over has Cal Ripken, and they sort of compete against each other type of thing. And I'm kind of surprised to hear that type of thing is not an option where you are, especially being in a more urban, not city area, but suburban areas. Sounds like
right.
that you're in. You'd think that you'd have a couple of different options with that. I find that interesting.
Well, I'm not sure if it has anything to do with it, but like the very first game I went to, I walked up to the snack bar and looking up at the menu on the ceiling, and I'm seeing Budweiser signage. And that was the first time where I'd seen beer served in pitchers at youth sports games. So
St. Louis.
I don't know if home of Anheuser-Busch. Yeah,
that's right.
We're gonna have beer at your youth baseball games.
Yep.
So I don't know if that's got anything to do with it. The fact that all these independent organizations that host their leagues sell alcohol at them, and maybe Little League of America says no, we can't be a part of that. I have no idea. I just know that
I would
there's
have
a
to
lot
guess
of independent athletic associations, and everybody sells beer, and you got to go find your own team.
Yep. Keep everybody in the area employed. So
Anheuser-Busch is bigger than Little League. That's my takeaway.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Boy, that sounds dangerous.
When Jimmy and I talk in terms of travel ball versus Little League, like I said, that's really whether it's elite or, whatever other terminology. It's basically either, a town community type of team, or is it a pay for play travel? That's just, and not just defined, because if you weren't aware of that, then I'm sure there's plenty of people listening that weren't aware that that's what we talk about. So that's something that maybe Jimmy and I need to start changing some of our terminology with this stuff to make sure people understand specifically what we're talking about.
Well, where I'd like to go next is let's talk about the cost of travel baseball, okay? Because we all know that it can be quite expensive. I have had people that I've spoken to and communicated with on social media that have said that they're involved with some organizations where it's really not that expensive. But in your guys' experience, tell me, let's go to Jake first. Tell me, what's it like? Is it very expensive?
Comparatively to other travel ball teams around us, we're one of the lower ones. And when I say one, we're probably in the bottom third in terms of expense. So that the operating costs obviously aren't to a point where the organization has to charge more for it, even though the product, in my opinion, of course, is much better in terms of resources, coaching, instruction, access to fields. They've kind of put themselves in a position in a high leverage position, especially with the field access. And what they've then done is kept their dues on the lower end comparatively, in order to attract as many people and as much talent as possible to put the quality on the field. And for parents, that's really, really important. Obviously, Little League comparatively is hardly any money at all. And we do have Little League here locally opposite of James, but because our closest brewery is
is in St. Louis.
It's not as big anyways, but yeah, it's not terribly expensive compared to the others. And I don't know if we need to get into numbers per se, but we pay quarterly. It all depends on how much cage time we need, how much of the other services that we're going to activate, like speed and agility, nutrition, a hitting academy with certain coaches. That there's sort of this menu that we can a la carte and plug and play, depending on the conversation with the parents and what do we want to do. And of course, the better your team is, the more you're going to travel, the further you're going to travel. So then the expenses get a little bit
right. There's all those ancillary expenses of hotels and restaurants and all that stuff. So when you talk about the different options that the facility offers, is that up to the individual or is that up to the team? Like where the team says you're going to be doing this hitting program, or is that up to, hey, who wants to do this hitting program type of thing?
It's both in this organization. So there's a minimal requirement, which especially during the wintertime, there's a hitting academy that is required and we all pay into it. And it is very high instruction, but it also serves a different purpose. It allows the owner and operators to see the kids and also see the development of each team. And you have Parsons team over here, you have Wonder team over here, you have the coaches' names, right? And to see how the organization as a whole is developing. And there's only so much you can pull from a cage, but it's a whole lot easier to do it that way than it is to drive out to every single one of these games. And we've got 4 to 7 teams per age group, and we're spread out from Manassas and Haymarket area to all the way through Maryland and then down to Fredericksburg, Virginia. So you can't get to all of them. So that's the easiest thing. And then, of course, all of those a la carte options, speed and agility, hitting academy, catcher's U, those things are offered on the side, and all the parents can participate as long as it's not interfering with practice times.
Right. So you talked about the fee being hit quarterly. So when your son, so say you're 11-year-old because you're 10-year-old because your 7-year-old just kind of starting with it. So like how long is he on a team for? If it's like, if you guys are still showing up, like, is it, again, what we're used to was you might have had tryouts, probably had tryouts at the end of the summer in August. And if you made the team, basically you're on the team until the following August, and then they do tryouts again, something like that. So how is that set up at your organization?
Exactly the same, unless there's a extenuating circumstance, somebody getting a job. The DC area is very transient, so people come and go quite a bit, right?
Right.
Or if there's an issue with relationships, families, the child.
Well, right. There's always that type of stuff on the side.
Sure.
But okay. All right. So they're essentially set up to be on for a year running fall to fall.
Correct.
Okay, good.
So good. James, what's your experience been like?
Same kind of deal as far as team, when the team is selected, et cetera, starts at the end of summer. We make monthly payments leading up until early spring, and then the payments end. But yeah, he would have been on that team starting in about August. He would do workouts over the fall. He wouldn't necessarily work out with his team because they had 2 training facilities and so many different times you could do hitting or pitching or this and that. So they would have different times on different days for this age group to go hit. And you kind of, picked and choose, and it wasn't necessarily with his team.
But let's back up just a little bit.
Yeah.
As far as the cost is concerned.
Yes.
So, was it an expensive proposition?
Very expensive. To the point of, had we known back when he was entering his junior year, I'm not sure we would have done this level of travel ball. I think because he had aspirations to play in college, I think we might have done something not as aggressive as far as travel and put more money aside to go do college coach camps and showcases. Exactly. But not necessarily like PBR or perfect game, but actually, trying to figure out kind of what schools you're thinking about. And I hate saying that you got to get a jump on it, but if you really want to play college ball, you better start thinking about it your junior year and start doing. And I think, honestly, the best exposure that he had to college coaches was doing those camps at the schools that he wanted to go to, et cetera, because like this last couple of years with the travel team, we would go to 8 out-of-town big-time tournaments, and there were college coaches all around, but unless you were in direct contact with the coach and could get them to come over to your game, there wasn't like guys were just, watching your games and, oh, I like that guy. You really kind of had to drag a coach to your game. And yeah, I think there were a lot of kids on his team that didn't kind of have a direction, and I think they thought just playing in these travel tournaments and performing well, they'd get noticed and picked up, and it just hasn't happened for them.
Yeah,
so very late in the game, they've had to kind of change their approach.
Yeah, I know when my kids were going through, there was a lot of that as well, where it kind of boiled down to sometimes just dumb luck, where a coach happened to be there to see a different player, and the kid showed out and maybe caught somebody's. He was there. The coach was there to watch a pitcher, and your guy happened to get a good hit off of him or something like that.
Yeah,
a lot of dumb luck that came into play there. And I don't know what you want to talk about a little bit on this, just to touch on how did the facility that you're going to, like, how did they advertise that, so to speak, in terms of, did they say like, oh, we're gonna take it to these tournaments and there's going to be college coaches and they're going to have a great opportunity to see them, right? Like,
absolutely. Yeah. And majority of the tournaments are run by the big. I can say the organization's game, but we all know who they are. It's it's PBR, it's Perfect Game, right. and they make those promises to the organizations.
Yep.
So that's how they're getting our guys to them. So yeah, it's just after going through it, I don't think I would do it the same way again. I think I would be a little more diverse on the where and when we were spending our money to get him exposed.
Right. Right. That makes a lot of sense.
Again, I'm sort of in an opposite situation where we are lucky enough that the owner of the organization was in the majors back and forth for a few years, and he's got a lot of contacts. And those contacts have extended throughout the collegiate ranks as well. We have 5 8th graders that have already verbally committed to Virginia Tech. Now, whether that means that once they get to junior or senior year, if that still exists, whether it's an offer from either side, that remains to be seen. But that's the level of exposure that we're getting. And even through COVID, actually, I'm sorry, 1 year, the very first year through COVID, the percentage dropped to 85%. But every single year that the organization has been in existence, they've averaged between 90 and 95% of the players within the organization getting a college scholarship. And maybe that's $100 for books. But we're playing D1, D2, D3, and we're able to leverage those resources. And that's another one of the reasons why it's so highly competitive. If that's your goal, if your child is talented enough and you think that that's a potential career path for them, you should probably align yourself with these guys.
Yeah, I should back up and say that the guys in our organization as well are a lot of former college and a couple of former major leaguers. And the contacts are there, but I will say the verbal commit stuff versus very early in your baseball career versus when it comes down to nuts and bolts of actually getting your letters and all of that. I've seen so many kids I'm committed to here. Well, if I'm just going to say it out loud, if Mizzou took all the kids that they committed to them, they'd have a roster of about 160 just from the area. So, all right. So, you got to kind of take and I know a lot of those organizations say, well, yeah, we've got commits here and there and there. Well, okay, that's all great. But at the end of the day, there are some programs that, will say that, but as far as making teams and actually playing in college, it doesn't always kind of happen that way.
Right.
Hey, Dave, we have Rick who joined, so you want to bring him in?
Yeah. So we've got another addition here. Rick, you give us your name, how old your player is, and how many years of travel ball you guys have been doing?
We are from the Sacramento area in California, just about 30 minutes south of Sacramento. I got a 12U player right now. Got him involved in travel ball at 10U. We tried it out at 9U for a little bit of a short season in the fall, and then got it pretty much fully committed once he turned 10 years old. And that was a thing me and Mom decided on really early on in his age. We knew, we're not going to get him too involved in the travel ball aspect of baseball until he got to the age of 10 years old. But we knew we wanted to keep him rolling with rec ball, playing with his friends, and then continue, chasing the dream of playing baseball by putting him in child baseball at 10 years old. So that's where we're at now.
Sorry to interrupt, guys. Rick, does your son play different sports?
Yeah. Oh, hell yes, he does. He plays basketball, football. He was playing soccer. He started playing soccer at 6 years old. Once he got involved in basketball and football more, soccer kind of fell out of our curriculum because of where football and basketball lies. So, sure.
I'm a big believer that kids should be playing multiple sports. 100%. Are you having a problem with the seasons overlapping? Because it seems that basketball goes almost all year round, baseball goes almost all year round. I mean, football can't, so I understand that, but football does overlap with baseball a bit. So I see that becoming a little bit of a problem. And what's your experience? What are you finding out?
So it does if we decide to play fall ball out here in our area. And our baseball spring starts in late January, if not early to mid-February. And then we go all the way till July, maybe potentially into August. We just let our team know, and I coach as well on the team. this year is my first year actually not coaching him in travel baseball, but I do coach rec baseball with him. My son, yes, still does play rec ball. We stop in July, and which kicks off football. So we start off football in August, and we go till November. And then right after football in mid-November, we jump right into basketball and jump right back into baseball. But, I mean, if you got a kid that's going to play from, let's just say, February all the way through to, December, which would be your spring, summer, and fall ball, you're definitely not going to have your child, your player, playing other or multiple sports. I am a huge, huge advocate of a multi-sport athlete, 100%.
All right. So let me ask you, and I mean, Jimmy and I are both big fans of that mentality. The facility or the travel team that he's playing with for baseball, is it like a large facility, or is it just a travel team?
It is right now. Yeah, it's just a travel team. We don't have a specific facility where we work out. You're not part of one of these big organizations, no. Right? So, and that's one of the things. It's nice to get that, because the other two gentlemen that are on there, their players are more with a bigger facility. It's also kind of nice. We now have East Coast, West Coast, and Middle America on board. So it's definitely a different perspective. And as I think you foreshadowed it with saying, based on the age that your kid is now, you're not really having too much trouble with the conflicts, but you see it on the horizon, especially once school ball starts, because a lot of school ball teams are starting to play as travel teams. And, so far you haven't, it sounds like you haven't had an issue. If your son didn't participate in part of the program, there was no problem with you being on the team again the next year once the new season started. But that is also something some places they run into. Like, oh, we want people that are going to commit to us January to December, and that's it. So you haven't seen that as of yet, is what you're saying? No, not so much, no.
How about you, James? Did you run into that?
Having to commit, yeah. I mean, it was almost the week after his summer travel season would end that we would get a call from the general manager, but they want to know right then and there, because if you're not jumping on teams in the St. Louis area in August, if you're not getting yourself set up for the following spring, you're not going to play.
So the talent level is that good that they fill up that quick?
It's crazy. I'm not going to say that necessarily the talent level is that great, but I mean, the talent level is really good, but there's just a lot of,
go ahead. You could say,
no, I'm just trying
that's
to think
what we're here
how
for.
to word this right. There's a lot of guys that are better GMs than they are coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And as seasons go, they make a lot of phone calls right at the end of the season and build their rosters that way.
Guys, don't be afraid. That's what we're here for. I want people to hear what your experiences are like and what it's like in different parts of the country. So again,
and we're not calling out any individual facility or program or anything like that, because obviously, even within the same facility, and this is an experience that Jimmy and I have had at the same facility, having completely different experiences in terms of the quality of the coaching and the quality of the commitment from the coach and from the facility to that team. We've seen that even at the same place. So at the end of the day, it's a business.
Yeah.
As you never see that in the brochure. But it's, at the end of the day, it's a business, and they're going to fill their teams. And, there was definitely kids on both of my son's teams that, I guess their check cleared. So, kid was able to play. And I've been in a boat where my kids were one of the best kids on the team, and I've had it where they were one of the weaker kids on the team. So It's, I'm not just talking about, my kids are the greatest things ever or anything like that. It's just, those experiences can be so dramatically different on the same team, depending on sort of your kid's position on that team. Are they in the top third or the bottom third of the players? Those experiences are often wildly different.
So if I can jump in real quick, was it James or Jake that was just speaking?
That was James.
It's James.
So James, to kind of touch on, maybe to help you a little bit on what you're trying to explain. So what I kind of deal with, and with my player being a multi-sport athlete throughout the entire year, an experience that I went through actually in 2022 is, he went in and played football, and the team that he plays for still and did in 2022, they ended up bringing on an additional 4 to 5 players to play with them. So now going into our 2023 season, they're picking and choosing which tournaments they are participating in now.
Let me interrupt you. I want to clarify something that you said there in terms of picking and choosing the tournaments. So saying like these 13 kids are going to go to tournament A and these 13 kids are going to go to like a rotating kind of the roster.
In a way, but it's not that to that extent of 13. So I would say you got 5 right now, which were the 5 that came and played in fall.
So they're only getting invited to certain tournaments?
They're not getting invited. They've already got the invite to play on the team, but now they're picking and choosing which tournaments they want to play in, which are the bigger tournaments. So like the local tournaments we play in our area, they're not going to.
So I want to make sure I understand what we're talking about here. So what they did is there were kids that couldn't play in the fall, so they brought on other kids to play in the fall to fill out that roster.
Right, got to have a roster.
Right, so those kids, now the roster is bigger. Is that correct? Because now you have the kids that were there that spring and summer.
Now you got to be at 18 or 20 kids or something now.
So what happened, I'll give it a long story short, with 4 kids from our 2020 season, they went and played football. And we had 12 kids on our roster for 2022. And one left, went to another team. And the other 3 actually ended up getting dropped for players.
All right, so I'm going to interrupt you there because that's something that I wanted to get into with all you guys, because it's something that I used to hear when I was involved with travel baseball. I used to hear it all the time. So parents would say, you know what, this team would be great if we only picked up a few more players, okay? So what they do is they pick up a few more good players, and then kids, like you said, kids have to get dropped. And what I used to tell parents is, this team will be good until we get somebody in here who replaces your kid. And then you want to see a parent's face drop. They're like, I never thought of that. So again, to your point with kids getting dropped and kids getting picked up, and these are how a lot of these problems present themselves, because everybody's scrambling for that brass ring that they're trying to reach for, which is actually going to lead me into my next question. And I want to hear from Jake because he's been sitting quiet for quite a while. What really, James, you already went through it. You already have the path that your son is going, but you guys have, Rick and Jake have younger kids. What are your expectations? What do you really believe you're going to get out of this travel baseball thing?
I don't know the answer to that question. It's a fluid answer, right? So I'm trying to give my sons the best environment that they can to reach the potential. It's like anything, it's a double-edged sword. If my sons were in a place where they couldn't make one of those teams and we would just play Little League, and then in the summer we'd find something else, and then in the fall we'd play football, and then in the winter we'd wrestle, I'd be fine with that. I really would. The difficult part of this is they're talented. So I want to try and surround them with the people, the resources, and everything to see how far it can go.
So that's another thing, too, that you just said, okay, which was another question that I had for you guys. So I'm going to throw it out there only because you brought it up. Sure. You said that they're talented, okay? How do you make that assessment? What are you comparing them against? How do you know that they're good baseball players at 7 and 10 years old?
That's a multifaceted answer, and I think it has a lot to do with, again, the environment. Are they exceeding all expectations in the structure, in the situation that they're in? And I'll give the personal example, because that's all I know, is when they're in the Little League and they are excelling, and you see some of the other coaches in the other teams that maybe aren't, and you sit there and you wonder, you are the culmination of the 5 people that you have closest to you in your life, right? So keeping that in mind, it's very similar in sports, where you surround yourself with more talented people, you surround yourself with more resources, you surround yourself with a better environment, and you become better as a result. And it's been more of a, let's find out how far you can push this talent level, what your potential is.
But
and then you get
again, in your situation, you're in a very large organization where your kids are playing, right? So you do have some basis to see where they fit in, and what the pecking order is, so to speak.
Now, yes.
Yeah.
When I had to make the decision, no. And I very much showed up to those tryouts with no expectations and just hoping that he made it, hoping that he was, like many parents are. And then as we get involved, you see, you're going up and down the East Coast and you're playing people, and you can make that assessment a little bit easier against the collective, right?
Okay. All right. And the other thing too, and guys, if I seem like I'm being short with you and I'm cutting you off on your answers, because I'm looking at the time and I got a lot more ground that we want to cover, so I'm going to hit you all kind of quick. Rick, give me yours. Your opinion on, how do you know that your player? How old is your son? 12.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, what gauge do you use to determine what level you believe he should be at, or who's making that determination?
I mean, I would say the coaches and the parents as well. It kind of just based off what they're how they're performing against other players. I mean, I don't the way I assess it is kind of put my kid in, and I don't do a lot of showcasing with him. I don't put him in NTIS showcasing or USSSA showcasing. We do a little bit here and there. We do a little bit of baseball youth games as well, the All-Star games. Just kind of put him out there and to see how he's assessed against other players from other regions. That's it. So I guess just basing it off that, really, I mean, it really is a hard one to answer.
No, I know it's a difficult question. That's why I put it out there, because believe me, there are people that been in this game a long time, and it's not an easy thing to do. So I'm going to move to you, James, because you've been through it. Tell me, how did that go for you?
Well, like I said, when we first moved here, coming from Texas, where travel ball meant you were playing darn near 12 months a year, you obviously are not doing that here in Missouri. So when we came here, like I said, he was on a very rec team, had coaches, come look at him, and we ended up finding a team that was, let's call it, good AA and could compete at the AAA level, but we're not going to do very well. Did pretty well there. As the competition grew, as he was coming up from 10U, coaches were recognizing him and selecting him. Obviously, he would go do one-on-one tryouts, but so I mean, really, it was coaches picking their teams that were letting us know kind of where he was at. So I kind of see the direction you're going. Like maybe you're over evaluating your own kid.
You haven't mentioned it either way, but from what you've said, I'm gathering you have not been his coach.
Not for a long time. No, I coached him very early on. When we first got here, I saw an opportunity there was actually some talent on the team, but I don't think the coaching was what I was hoping to see. So I offered some assistance, and through the progression of the season, I don't want to say I was the coach, but yeah, I was a co-coach, and we were running a lot of the drills that I had come up with and saw through a lot of my time in Texas, et cetera.
Yeah, my point on that wasn't to put you on the spot with it. It was more just so it's easier for you to be a judge of how good your player is, because it's other people entirely for the last however many years that have been making that decision for you.
Sure, absolutely.
As somebody who coached their kid and then also didn't coach their kid, somewhat similar to maybe what your experience was. I may have stayed in it a little longer than you did, but I didn't coach high school for them and things like that. So yeah, I mean that's one of those things where sometimes it is other people and their perspective is certainly going to be different. And Jimmy and I have certainly seen both ends of that spectrum where the dad, I've had a dad tell me their kid sucks, and the kid was good. He wasn't a superstar. He wasn't going to be drafted in the second round, but he was a good player. And I've had, and again, I'm sure Jimmy and you guys at this point, even the guys with the younger guys have probably seen this already, where you've had where the dad thought, yeah, their kid was the next big thing. So but
we talk about daddy ball all the time.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, and it's tough. I'll be honest. I try not to use that expression. I understand why it gets used, but then I look back and I go, well, I coached my kid. And so that is technically daddy ball, Rick is coaching. That does have such a negative connotation to it. And so I get it. It's just not something that I say because, I was probably harder on my kid than most of his coaches were because I never wanted that accusation. Mm-hmm. My kids were not the starting shortstop, every game and, had to be the pitcher, even though he was walking kids or, I've had to make that trip out to the mound and pull my own kid off the mound. And it just, breaks your heart.
So, James, you brought up a little bit about coaching, so that's somewhere I want to go because this is something I'm very passionate about as far as coaches being educated and coaches understanding what the goal actually is when you're coaching youth players.
Right.
There are many travel teams. Dave and I had went over one of our local leagues here that has approximately 600 travel baseball teams in their organization, which means that there has to be somewhere around 1,200 coaches, possibly more, for those 600 teams. Okay.
Clarify that's not one organization. That's not a facility organization.
It's a league.
That's a league. It's a travel league.
Okay.
I didn't want you to think we had a Yankee Stadium, facility going on.
No, it's a league, and that's all age groups. I don't even know. They start now as early as 6 or whatever the hell they do. So, 600 teams, minimum, in my opinion, is probably 1,200 coaches. That's a lot of baseball coaches that have to be on top of their game. Okay, so again, I'm going to go right around the horn here, and I'll go to Rick first. What has been your experience? I know he's only 12, so it hasn't been many, many years, but how has the coaching been?
Ooh.
Hit a nerve, didn't I?
Yeah, you did. I've seen the Sacramento Valley go from 6, and I'm not exaggerating one bit, 6 travel ball teams to play on. Those were your options, to a total of 21 of this year.
For the same age group.
I honestly, I wouldn't even just say just 12U. I would go all the way back to, I would say 10 to 11 and 12U. There's multiple of them now. So with the coaching, honestly, I'm going to be straight up, but it's been horrendous. And there's great coaching out there. Don't get me wrong, but then there's a lot of.
Well, that's actually my point. Is that with that many teams, yes, you're going to have teams that have very good coaches. Sure, they're out there. Of course, they are.
You got coaches out there that are, and I don't know if this is a bad thing to say or not, but you still got coaches out there that are telling 13U players, "Hey, elbow up, hands up," and that's all you hear the entire game. They have good intentions. Don't get me wrong. They all of them do have good intentions. Don't get me wrong. They have all good intentions, but when it comes to knowledge of the game and development, it lacks heavily.
Okay, so Jake, give me your assessment with the coaching in your area.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I am in no way, shape, or form a great baseball coach. I'm a a dad who's had to learn through YouTube and TikTok and talking to all these guys. And that's one of the reasons we went to the travel program that we were.
Wait, and wait a minute, though. You left out and listening to great podcasts like Clearing the Bases. Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Clearing the Bases. That's
Shameless
right.
plug. Shameless plug alert.
That's exactly right.
Can I check on something real quick? I love hearing that you're mentioning that, you're learning off TikTok, YouTube, and like, is it helping though?
For me, yes. And I'm not the head coach either, right? So I'm an assistant. So I am not.
You're an assistant, still taking the initiative to learn more to help. That's you.
Yeah, you got to find your spot, right? You got to find your chemistry. We have 4 coaches, and I'm more the mental coach side. I'm the bench coach. You're not going to see me on third base coaching. You're not going to see me calling the infield in certain situations or a bunt sign. That's just not me. I'm the rah-rah guy. But I can drill over the last couple years learning, I can drill with the best of them. And once you develop that over time and put yourself in these scenarios where you have people that know the game better than you do, and you learn through those tough game situations or tournaments that you're associated with. I was very much like James, where I'm going out and offering my help because I see how bad it is, right? If I'm not going to put my son with somebody that I know I can do a better job, and I am waiting for the day that I can just turn them loose because we find someone that is absolutely fantastic. I'm still a dad coaching, right? But we have, lucky enough, we've aligned ourselves with families, because families, I think, are just as important as far as the dynamic and the environment that you place your kids, especially in that travel ball. You're going, all over the country with them.
100%. Yeah. But
with the head coach as well, because I trust him. Just there is I don't know if there's a word for it. Whatever he says is gospel for me, and I trust him with my son. And it is a very fortunate situation that I don't have to be dad coach everybody, right? I can be the assistant. I can coach or concentrate on what I'm good at, the areas in which I'm comfortable, and still help the team. And we have found ourselves in a very, very fortunate situation.
So one of the things that you had said was that the coaching was great. So from what you just explained, I'm assuming that you were talking about your team and what your kids have been through. What I'm talking about is on a whole in your area.
You got some good and some bad, but I think it's much more good than bad, and that brings up an interesting topic, which I won't go into detail here, but it's an interesting question. Have we reached a tipping point in youth baseball where the product that you get from the rec league, has it started to shift into that travel ball where we're recruiting enough talent out of little league and out of rec, and the dads and moms that come along with it, that it's starting to tip the scales towards travel? Because I haven't run into very many egos. Those are few and far between. It's maybe one coach a tournament, maybe.
That's a good sign. All right, I'm going to shift over to James, because you've been through it. So you've seen it through all of these years. James, what kind of coaching have you seen?
Well, obviously, I think it's obvious that the lower rec levels, you're going to see more parents who are just willing to put in the time, who might not have the baseball background. But as my son moved up, both in age and in level of competition, I mean, he played on a team that was still coached by parents, but the parents were, she was a D1 catcher and he was a D3 pitcher. And so, wealth of knowledge from both the parent coaches. And as you move up, like his, one of his last summer teams, I mean, he had a major leaguer, 10-year major leaguer that he still works out with weekly. So the coaching, obviously, as you're moving up and level of competition and in age, the coaching that is available here in the St. Louis area is phenomenal. Not just and I know you were asking about, not just your team, but from what I've seen, there are a lot of really good coaches here. Now, I can only speak from what I've seen Alex compete against. And, you know, at that high level, there's a lot of former college players that are now coaching youth. I can't speak to the rec for the last 5 years, so I don't really know what's happening down at that level. Probably still a lot of, you know, just parents who are willing to put in the time and probably don't know a ton about the game, but God bless them that they're willing to go and you know put the ball on the tee and help these kids try to create a level swing or whatever the case is. But yeah, from my perspective, the coaching has been fantastic.
Yeah, and the reason why I asked that question is because I'm fortunate with my high school. I happen to coach in the Catholic High School Athletic Association in New York, and I have not run into a high school coach that wasn't phenomenal at what he did. All of the coaches that I play against, they're all good coaches. They know what they're doing, and I see that day in and day out. So what happens is when I go with my travel team, and then I start going around to all of these tournaments and I see these other coaches, I have something to compare it against. So that's kind of what led me to that.
But you're probably still going to see a dad or two or three coaching the teams up until you get to the freshman and high school level. That's when we saw the professional, in quotes, coaching start to take over, and that's kind of when, and I hate the term, but I understand the term, daddy ball ended, and it really became, you know, positions were in playing time and where you hit in the order was based really on merit, not, you know, well, Danny's daddy said, you know, yeah, we all know that whole situation, but yeah, once you get to the high school level for travel ball, unbelievable. The progress that my son has made, specifically fielding, once you get to real good professional coaching, yeah, you will see the development. Just, it's exponential, absolutely exponential.
This has been good, and maybe we consider this episode 1 of, you know, talking to parents about state of travel ball. Again, I think we've gotten 3 real different perspectives at different age levels, and even though Jake's and Rick's kids, Jake's older kid is relatively close in age to Rick's kid, it's a world apart when you get to 12, because now, getting up to 13 means being on the big field and getting close to school ball age. I don't know if he's going into school ball age this spring or next spring, probably, Rick. Your kid
it'll be next spring,
next spring already. So and that's it's a whole different world. Because you talk about a place where you're not even voting with your money anymore. You're taking what's there, and in terms of the coaching and whatever else, and you're just hoping for. So that's a whole different world. So I think that's even something that we didn't even touch on, that type of aspect of it this time.
I was just going to also say, now that he's in high school, he's got the school spring season versus the travel summer season, and just the vast difference between those two beasts.
Yeah, not having to pay for hotels is not bad.
Yeah.
And you know what? There was a question I had that I want to ask, and I'm going to try to phrase it differently for Rick and Jake than I do for James because of the age difference. So I'm going to start, James, I'm going to finish up with you. So I'm going to go to Rick and Jake first, and we'll come back. So let's go to Jake first, and tell me, how do you see this playing out for the next, it's probably with your kids, it's the next 6-7 years. How do you see this playing out?
Our situation?
Yeah, just travel baseball and his involvement. And
as long as we are aligning ourselves with the quality of people that we have found ourselves with. I mean, we've got colonels, lieutenant colonels, deans of nursing. We've got teachers, librarians, realtor. I'm a realtor. There's another realtor. We've got people from all walks of life, and it really is our own little village, our baseball family. So as long as that's the case, I don't foresee that changing unless there's something going on where, like I mentioned, we've got to drive 45 minutes to an hour. So that does present its own challenge with practices every day or every other day. We're putting a lot of miles on my truck, and even though the dues are comparatively smaller, it adds up for us, right? So I'm going to keep it up as long as I can, and I don't drive my lovely wife absolutely bonkers.
Well, tell me what is the ultimate goal? Where would you like to see your boys get to? What's the goal? Is it a college scholarship? Is it to play in college in general, or what?
I would love to see that. That's not the focus right now for me. I'm really concentrating on their potential, and it may be a little bit of tunnel vision, but I think that because of their ages, that's really all I can focus on. I don't know how. This is pre-puberty, right? I'm not a big guy. Neither is my wife, right? If they wind up there like Altuve, there's only one of them, right? But that's not my goal. That's not my focus. It is whether it's baseball, whether it's football, whether it's wrestling, it is getting to the max potential possible. And as long as that's the case, as long as they're growing, as long as we're surrounding ourselves with good people, and I can do it financially, I'm gonna continue.
Okay. What about you, Rick?
Well said from him. Pretty much same standards, man. Honestly, just just haven't played to his full potential, and obviously his dream is to play college baseball, and obviously with college baseball follows getting drafted. That's his dream, and whatever me and mom can do to help him get to reach his full potential, that's what we're here for. That's basically what it comes down to, and pretty much put him into a spot and surround him around just genuine good people, environment, and it does come down to the parenting environment, and then following, the players as well. That's it. He pretty much took all the words out of my mouth right there.
So the one thing that I'm going to say to you two, again, because they're young, is just remember the 3-letter word with your boys, and that's fun. Got to be fun. Yep. Otherwise, all of this stuff that we're talking about, okay, and how they're going to progress and all of this stuff will not happen unless they enjoy going and they look forward to going and they're having fun while they're there. So
I'll add just a small little wrinkle to that, and in these hour-long journeys that we have to and from practice, there's an opportunity to do a whole lot of parenting for me. And applying, I always heard growing up, regardless of the sport, sports prepare you for life, and I guess I kind of got it, but I didn't fully understand how it was applied to life. Oh, teamwork and all, those are all the buzzwords. I'm actually able to break certain scenarios down with my son and teach him about life so that he can go and that doesn't have an expiration date, right? And we could do that whether it's travel or rec or what have you, but certainly within the more competitive situation of travel, of these tournaments, it presents those opportunities quite a bit more. Okay.
All right. So what
you agree with that?
What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to James. I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball, okay? It's a little bit different of, the question that I asked them. You've been through this. If you had to do it all over again and you had Jake's 7-year-old and you were getting involved in it right now, what would you do differently than what you've done?
James, he can hit. Man. He can hit.
No, honestly, so back in those single-digit years, he did have the opportunity to do like all-stars and do a little travel during the summer. And this is based on the experience that I had playing youth baseball. We decided to not do that. We let him have the fun and let him experience that spring. But then he moved on to swimming and other sports that he did. He's been a 4-year state swimmer for his high school team as well. So growing up, he wanted to be in the pool. And I was fine with that because we had also seen kids that were his age that did that all-star summer travel, at 7, 8, 9, and 10, and they burned themselves out. So that was one thing that I think we did do right, was not have him play baseball for 6, 7, possibly even 8 months of the year. We let him have his spring season and moved him on to other sports. As he got older, honestly, I don't think I would have changed the thing in the travel ball from ages 11 to 13 to 14. I'm really very, very confident that we did the right thing there. It's only been the last couple of years. I think, a goal at 12, 13 was make your high school team. Okay, well, he accomplished that, and as hey, everybody's telling him, hey, you got a chance to play ball in college, and what level of college, and this and that, and I also need to say he's a very smart kid. He's going to be graduating with his high school diploma as well as an associate's degree. So his college baseball decision is being made more on the academic part as opposed to the baseball team. So we weren't making baseball decisions. We were making academic decisions and trying to see if the baseball would align. Having said that, I would strongly recommend, and it's something that I wish we had done a little earlier, maybe start thinking about if he is a good high school player and colleges are a possibility, really start thinking about doing more showcases and specific college coach camps to get in front of the guys that you really want to get in front of and start reaching out from them very early, well before your senior year, but start thinking about your junior year and not just relying on the travel tournaments for your college coach exposure. It's there, but it's not, I don't think it's anywhere close to how it's kind of sold by some of these big programs. So really, you got to start doing your own work and having your athlete build a profile and really kind of start getting on that a little earlier than you think you probably need to. And I would also say, if you're thinking, if you have a high school baseball player who is thinking about college, start taking the ACT or SAT now so you can develop your sport. Really start getting into the college process a little earlier than you probably think you need to.
Well, many college scholarships are supplemented with the academic side too, right? So,
well, my son's going to be playing D3, so there is no athletic scholarship. Yeah, D2, there's some money at D2, obviously D1.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great because that is, obviously, choosing your travel team. There's some options, but geographically, you're certainly limited when it comes to college. Obviously, the world, as they say, is your oyster. So, kids could go anywhere, anywhere. And that's it. I know, again, I don't know how much regular listeners you guys are. We've talked to quite a few college coaches recently, and they all say the same things. It starts with grades, and then it goes to baseball after that. So definitely some good advice in terms of focusing in on the entrance exams and the coursework that you take in high school and whatnot. But that's some great advice there.
Oh, sorry. I also wanted to say that him being a dual sport athlete in high school, a lot of the coaches love that he was a swimmer. Do you still hear that from college coaches, that they're still looking for multi-sport athletes?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I could go on for a very long time speaking about that because there's so much that goes into it. Yeah. Not just the fact that the athleticism because you're a multi-sport athlete, but the discipline, the different coaches that they've played for. There's just a myriad of reasons why you would want a kid like that. So, Rick, I know you're chomping at the bit. You wanted to say something.
I just wanted to touch on what James was just saying. Kudos to you guys, man, for making academics the number one priority. From where I'm at on the West Coast area, and I'm not going to say the whole entire West Coast, but my area and the parents that I'm around, travel baseball, the rec area, you don't hear a lot of it, unfortunately. And it's a sad thing. Everyone just, really wants to fall on, well, my kid's an athlete. He's athletic. This is what and how he's going to get here. And wow. It's really, really, it's sad to hear and see. So real quick, I'm going to touch on something as a coach, and I started this at the 10U level. My kid's 12 now. 10U, I was asking my parents for progress reports. And when I did that, you should have seen the looks and the kickback I got from parents and the league. And I was on the board with our local league for 5 years, 4 years. And you should have seen the kickback I got from the parents and the board for me being out there asking for progress reports from their players at the 10U level. It was like, are you kidding me? Like,
well, I mean, if you want to know the importance of grades, go back and listen to the episode. This is not to plug the podcast. Go back and listen to the episode.
Shameless plug alert! Shameless plug alert!
Go back and listen to the episode with Steve Springer, who got a scholarship to UCLA to go play baseball, and he couldn't go because his grades weren't good. So what you're saying, Rick, where people say that your athleticism is going to get you there, no, it isn't.
And coaches will get fired for offering scholarships to a player that winds up not being able to play there because of grades, because you just wasted another opportunity to bring in another player. So that's 100%. You starting it at this age is fantastic, and hopefully you continue to coach them or whoever they go with. Now, maybe it's something that they'll be looking for as they move up the ladder into different levels and different organizations.
Last year at 11U, I sat my own child for having a D on his progress report. That's the extent I go to. I don't tolerate that. So, I mean, he sat for the first 3 innings and then came in for 1 inning and then sat the rest of the game. I gave him a little bit of shine out there, but that was it until he got that grade brought up. But when I asked for those progress reports, the parents' looks on their faces was they were astonished that I was asking for that, and like as if it was too soon or I shouldn't be. And it's like, no.
He needs to understand that now, because I'll tell you right now, and Dave and I have discussed this, your grades aren't up to par on my JV baseball team, which is nowhere near a college team. It's not even close. Okay?
Right.
You get bad grades, you're not playing. You put your son in for an inning, you're not playing, period, if your grades are not good. So, all right, Dave, what do you think?
No, I think we got a lot of good raw material here. Want to really thank you guys for spending your time with us. Again, I say it every show. Everybody's time is valuable, whether it's as a listener or as a participant, as a guest on the show. Your guys' time is no less valuable than anybody else that we've had on. So, really appreciate you taking the time to come out and share your views with us. As I said, maybe it's something that we'll revisit again in the future and get into some deeper topics. But really appreciate it.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for coming on. Rick, I want to thank you for actually making a suggestion to me to do this. I think it's something that kind of needed to be done, and like we were just saying, I think that maybe we could dive into some deeper topics somewhere along the road. So I just want to thank you all for taking the time.
I appreciate you guys holding a topic like this. I think it needs to be heard, and people need to come on and speak about what's really happening, because I've watched it go from the tip top to the low to the medium to the low again, and right now it's just I see it honestly getting worse, unfortunately. And it's just it's huge for your listeners, especially, to really hear the intake from parents like me, James, and Jake, to as you, as Jimmy and Dave as well, to get the really clear understanding of what's really happening out there right now and what you guys came from, whether it was 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, and what it is today. So that's big. So I appreciate you guys very, very much, and the time as well.
All the resources we have possible is it's the same reason we're doing this podcast here, right? Trying to get people answers, trying to give people an outlet. So in this day and age with the technology we have, I mean, I can't tell you how many awesome, amazing people that I would have never had a chance to talk to or get to know on a deeper level if it weren't for baseball. And this is really cool. It's a great opportunity.
Yeah. It is.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. We really appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you.
So there you have it. Some perspectives from all over the country and at all different levels of travel ball. And we're going to combine that with some of Jimmy's and mine experience. We'll talk a little bit about it now. So what'd you think, Jimmy?
I thought it was really interesting. I mean, we have Culpeper, Virginia, St. Louis, Missouri, Sacramento, California, different perspectives, different levels, things that we've talked about in the past, such as 7-year-olds playing travel baseball. There was a lot of stuff in there that we've talked about that it seems to me that it kind of came to light through the conversation we had with James, Jake, and Rick.
Well, yeah. So let's touch base on a couple things. There's a couple things that we've talked about in the past, but it's been quite a while. So one of the things you talk about, how do you pick a travel organization to get involved with, a team and or organization? Because we had both here, right? We had, I think Rick was just on a team, and I don't mean just like there's anything wrong with it, but Rick's kid was on a team versus I think both of the other ones they were with an organization, like a bigger organization. So they're going to have some wildly different experiences because the team is probably more likely to just grow as a team, maybe add this person, drop that person as, a kid decides not to play or somebody moves away, somebody moves into the area, that type of thing, versus the organizations where, from my experience, and we didn't really get into this in the conversation, but was more of like, all right, open tryouts, right. Every year open tryouts and let's see who makes it, who doesn't type of thing.
Right. The other thing that I took from that part of it about the organization versus just the travel team is that the training seemed to be really, really different, where James and Jake said that they have a lot of trainers who were college players, former major league players. And I wonder, I mean, we didn't get into it with Rick, but I wonder, like, who's training his players? Is he doing it? Does he have, other people that they bring in to help train? So I see a little difference there, too.
Right. And there's positives and negatives with that as well. And then, of course, the cost, while we tried to touch base, you tried to touch base on the cost. We didn't get any solid answers there, but I think you could gather from what they were saying. Now, here's the thing. The different parts of the country, what's expensive to somebody in Sacramento, California might be prohibitive in, the suburbs of St. Louis. What's expensive in the suburbs of St. Louis might be relatively cheap in Sacramento, so there's all that perspective. I wish we did get into a little bit more of some harder numbers, just not trying to pry into their own personal life, but just to, again, give listeners an idea. We've talked about it before. There's just a wide range. Some of it is going to be, and I forget, I think it was James that was talking about, you had your basic fees, which were already high, and then you also had all the extras, whether it was hitting camps and pitching camps and I'm sure catching camps and all that type of stuff. Whereas Rick's was probably more of pay one price and this is what the team is doing. And if you want to do anything extra, kind of go find a one-on-one trainer type of thing.
Right. Yeah, and that's the same impression that I got. And look, let's face it, we already know that the cost varies. I mean, I know in our area, I've heard facilities and bigger organizations that are in the $5,500, $6,000 range. It's different how you break it down. How much does it actually cost to be on the team is X amount of dollars. Do you have to do a program? That's more money. Whereas somebody like Rick, he might be able to put the whole thing together for $1,000 for each family. So we already know that it's going to vary depending on where you are, what type of team you are. And I believe that that's probably a good spread the way those costs are.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. And Rick's, that might even be high. Because we have, again, my own personal experience when we had one of my kids was on a team that it wasn't, I don't think anybody on that team had any designs on getting to the show. So we weren't going and doing 12 tournaments throughout the year. We played in a spring league, we played in a summer league, and we went to 3 local tournaments. So other than paying for umpires, balls, and uniforms, that was it.
Yeah.
There wasn't a big nut for these kids, and that's where, again, a lot of these topics overlap. Where we talked about talent levels, and a couple of the guys really talked about the talent levels, and the word elite was mentioned multiple times. And I'm not trying to kill anybody for this. I mean, their kids might be elite, but just because the team has elite in the name, or the facility has elite in the name, or they're going to quote unquote elite tournaments, doesn't make the play elite.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I'll agree with that. I mean, let's face it, it all comes down to the player, and it's always been that way. The one thing that we didn't hear from anyone, and I'm going to actually take this to the next level up about travel ball, is what about these teams that play in Georgia and they play in Florida? They go to these big perfect game and these really big tournaments that adds an additional cost to this. Then you have airfare, then you have
hotels and meals and all that stuff.
Yeah, and so I'm assuming that, again, going by what everybody said, that maybe that might be down the road for somebody like Jake. Whereas James is over, he's pretty much done with travel baseball. His son's going to college. And it seemed to me like Rick seems content with what he has, and he's going to build his team and his players his way, and wherever the chips fall, they fall.
Right, and the emphasis on multi-sports. So if you are playing multi-sports, how could you be designating all of this time, effort, and money into baseball by itself and being one of these, I'm going to say crazy, not in a pejorative way, just schedule. Listen, we've both been there. Schedule gets crazy. Schedules of, yes, we never. Actually, we did have to fly to a couple of tournaments. Sorry, I forgot. Because I wound up not going because I wound up having to go into the hospital. That's a whole different story. But my son flew with the team down to some tournaments, Florida, and then I think South Carolina, something like that. But so yeah, I mean, if he was also, and at that point he was only playing baseball. If he was playing other sports, how could you designate that much time, effort, and money into that? So, the bottom line is that we got to realize there's no one right answer, and I guess there are wrong answers for this, because it could get to the point where something, and I'm trying to tie this all together. You brought it up, but none of the three dads brought it up. Anything about enjoyment. I don't know if you picked up on that. I put notes down. There was zero conversation really about the kids enjoying doing all of this. You brought it up at the end. Hey, make sure you keep it fun for the kids. And, they all agreed with that. But I found it interesting that in an hour plus conversation, that never came up as one of the goals. You asked them about current goals and future goals, and that never came up. And now I'm not killing these guys for it. It just may not have been front of their mind. And they all seem like they're good, dedicated dads and coaches. A couple of them are doing the coaching themselves as well. So not saying that they're not keeping that in mind. It was just curious that never came up at all.
Yeah, I now I remember, because to be honest with you, I didn't remember bringing up the part about fun, but that could also have a lot to do with the way we phrased our questions. We stayed more nuts and bolts. We didn't get into that type of thing until I said it. So I'm sure that everybody wants to go out there and see their kids having fun, but I think a lot of the question there is he having fun because they're winning? You said that they mentioned a couple of times about these elite teams and the boys being very talented. So I'm assuming they're playing on very good teams. So maybe that fun is coming because they are winning. Okay, it's just one of those things.
Also, what about the 12th player on that team? Is he having fun? Is he getting the opportunities? And that's something that I'm sure, like me, you had your list of topics to get into, and just like pretty much every other show we get to, we don't get to everything because we can't make these shows 3 hours long. So that was one of the things that I wanted to get into. Like, what was your kid's position on the team? They all seem to speak fairly highly of their kids, but if the teams that they're on are elite, though, the 11th, 12th, 13th best player on that team are elite players, but they can't all play at the same time. So are they getting the playing time? Are they getting the reps? Are they getting the opportunity? Are they getting the individual attention to help get them to the next level? That was some of the stuff we didn't talk about. And that's where, again, I think one of the most valuable things of this kind of conversation for parents out there, especially with the younger kids, obviously once they get to James's kids level, it's like I said, when you're in your last year, the ship has kind of sailed. But for those of our listeners that have the younger kids, selecting that team or that organization, that's one of the first questions I would ask about. Because back when we were starting with travel ball, what was the whole saying? This isn't Little League.
Yes.
Right? They used to say it all, well, hey, this isn't Little League. There's no mandatory playing time, no minimum playing time. And that was from the top down. Now, they would always also say, and this is multiple organizations, multiple coaches, they would always say, oh, we're going to make sure they get enough opportunity to play and grow and blah, blah, blah. And then once the game started, sometimes that didn't happen.
Right.
So that's something you want to be able to discuss with the leader, whether it's the owner of the facility or the head coach or both or whatever. Something that I think is imperative for you to speak about, because practicing gets you better, absolutely. But everybody on the team is practicing.
Right.
So then it's, well, what about individual consultations and individual trainings? Well, those are probably going to cost you more.
Right.
So are you willing to do that? And that's not going to be on the brochure generally.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? Nobody actually brought up anything about playing time. So I'm going to make the assumption that their kids are playing regularly, and because obviously that would have been something that they would have brought up. But yeah, I mean, to your point, everybody is practicing, so you have to give them the 12th, the 13th player, the 14th player, how many you have. You have to give those other guys a chance to enjoy it, to enjoy that hard work. So, look, I'm going to practice hard because I get to play. Otherwise, the player is just going to say, well, why am I killing myself in practice? I go to the game, I sit on the bench. That's crazy.
Right. And I've seen that before. I don't know if you have any of the teams you were involved with, but I've seen that with players where, a month and a half into the season, a player or two dropped because why bother at that point? It's frustrating. It's frustrating to the parents. Parents are taking time off of work or are driving for 2 hours to go watch their kid not play. Right. And hey, I liked all the kids on the team. I didn't like them that much that I needed to schedule my entire weekend around watching, somebody else's kids play.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And I mean, let's face it, I did my best to get all of the players in the game and to make sure that it was adequate for everyone because of the situation, like you said. So, yeah, again, I mean, going back to the original thing that we were talking about, none of them mentioned anything about playing time, so I have to assume that they're probably the better players.
Right. Or their coaches are making sure everybody's getting that adequate time.
Right. Well, I will say that, with James, he knows where the journey took him. Right? His son, right. College baseball player, great. That was fantastic. It worked out. Now, again, the other question that comes to my mind is, was it worth all of that money that you paid to get him to that D3 level? And my feeling from what he said was that, well, maybe that it's not necessary, after going through it, to say that, hey, he could have played here, went to a bunch of college camps at the schools that he wanted to go to, and that would have sufficed. And I believe that, and we all know I do. But for Rick and for Jake, it's still up in the air. Am I going to spend, over the course of their careers, I can't imagine Jake with two kids, 7 and 10, and going with this all the way till they're 17. You're talking almost $100,000 by the time all is said and done. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking easily could be somewhere in the 40 grand a piece. Again, depending on what level, and are they going to be flying out to California to go to tournaments or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, you look at that kind of investment, and then that's where you got to weigh out. Okay, was it worth it? Well, what makes it worth it? Is it just to play in college, or is it to, kind of build that baseball family of the, if you're going to be on the same team for 5, 6, 7 years and have, they become your best friends and somebody that, you're going to be the best man, the best man at your wedding is going to be the kid who caught for you when you were 12, who knows where that life leads. But yeah, you got to look at that. I know my own personal experience, my older son that stayed playing travel ball all the way through high school, I would say his last 2 years, definitely his last year, we definitely would have been better served having him just do private lessons and college camps as opposed to being on a quote unquote elite travel team that was not managed well. There was some personal circumstances, I think, with that coach, and he had a good experience. I guarantee he did not speak to another player on that team the day after. Not that there was any animosity, but it just wasn't that kind of team.
Right. So, I mean, we could look at it this way, that maybe James' experience helped Rick and Jake to understand what this is all about and where it's gonna lead for such young players. And again, I'm not trying to kill, especially Jake, and don't get mad at me because the 7-year-old playing travel baseball, if you've listened to the show, you've heard me say I think that's a little much. I don't know what you're getting out of it. I really don't. And again, I'm not trying to beat anybody up. This is my opinion, okay? And again, there's all of the money involved, all of the time, and this and that. Am I wrong?
This is such a tough thing. I mean, he talked about being a little more rural. He had to travel 45 minutes to an hour every time they were going to practice or play at, I guess, a home field. Obviously, if it's true travel ball, who knows how much further they could be traveling than that at any given time.
Right.
But yeah, no, I mean, you've heard me talk about that before. That's something you and I are, I would say, just about 100% on the same page with. Is playing travel ball at 7, and think of the stress on the family because they already have, they have the other kid that's playing travel ball. So now you are splitting it up. So mom is one city with one kid and dad is in another city with the other kid. And, not being able to share some of those experiences because you're separated like that puts some extra strain on. And God forbid, trying to schedule an actual vacation or something in between when, when's there going to be a week when both kids are not going to have a game or a tournament or whatever, or you're going to miss. And then when you miss, what does the rest of the team think of that? Because you're supposed to be making this big commitment. And, even though, again, we've talked about this plenty of times, one of my negative feelings that have come through the years is the whole commitment thing, because that seems to be a one-way street where the kid is supposed to be committed to the team, but the team isn't always committed to the kid. Not always, obviously. Remember, we always speak in generalities here on the Clearing the Bases show. But to follow up on what you're saying, like, what are you getting out of it? If it's just extra training, why not do one-on-one lessons?
Right.
Are you building team camaraderie at 7 on a travel team that you couldn't get from playing on a local team, even if it wasn't a quote-unquote elite team? Probably not.
Right. I kind of want to get off the 7-year-old thing because that's, I guess what it comes down to is people have to do what they feel is best for their kid. Who are we to tell them this is right or that's wrong? I just think
and that's not what we're doing, but we are giving a different perspective and just food for thought, something to think about of, is it worth it? What's the downside to not doing it at this point? And neither one of us thinks there's going to be much of a downside.
Right. So, I mean, really, I think that all in all, it was a great idea. Thank you, Rick, for bringing it up. And I think it's something that I would be interested in doing again somewhere down the road. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, certainly. We really, really appreciate it. And it may not sound like it from the last several minutes of what we talked about, but we do. I say all the time with our guests, everybody's time is valuable, and we thank them up, down, left, and right. And it's the same thing here. These guys aren't known coaches or anything like that, but it's the same thing. Everybody's time is valuable. So just taking the time to help educate our listeners, which is our goal on every show, make it a little bit entertaining, but get a lot of good baseball knowledge, coaching knowledge, and developmental knowledge. And here we got it from some of the sources, like I said, the other side of the fence than what we normally hear. So really appreciate you guys. James from St. Louis, Jake from Virginia, and Rick from California. We span the whole country. I would be happy to do another one of these with another couple of parents, maybe get a mom's point of view in there, because that could certainly be wildly different. That would be great. So yeah, reach out to us. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know how you enjoyed the show, what you liked about it, what you didn't like about it. Again, at the CTB Show on Twitter, and clearingthebases@gmail.com for email. Go ahead and reach out to us. It's not something I think we want to start doing on a weekly basis or anything, but I could see us doing this again at some point. So if you're interested, just let us know. Otherwise, I think it was a good show. I think that it should have been helpful to a lot of our guys, and either you can reflect on similar experiences that you've had, or with the younger kids, some pitfalls to maybe avoid and some good things to look out for. Two things we didn't talk about today that are always vitally important, or to keep in mind, the only two things that you can control at all times are your effort and your attitude. PMA, positive mental attitude, give 100% effort, good things will follow. Final thoughts, Coach?
Yeah, I agree, Dave. I think that it was a good idea, and I think that I would like to do it again somewhere down the road. And I like that we got different points of view, different age levels, and different situations, which people out there can learn a little bit from. But the one thing that we really didn't touch on much on the show is that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.